Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a grimdark, gothic fable of epic existential proportions. Picture this. A weary seeker stands at the mouth of a dark corridor, watching the uncanny jester studying his own bare hand in the guttering torchlight. The seeker asks, why? And the jester replies that the essence of humanity isn't some static state of being, but a messy, fluid process of becoming. We aren't looking at a hero climbing to glorious heights today. No, we are walking the downward road into the unsaid rooms of human existence. It's a journey about the raw radiance of reality and what happens when we finally step out of our rehearsed lives. So our journey kicks off with a totally chilling challenge from a character known as the Sapphire Prophet. Imagine this guy standing at the freezing edge of the cosmos, draped in the colors of the furthest stars. He is an architect of absolute nihilism. For him, the universe is just a cold, empty cathedral, and self-awareness, well, that's the ultimate cruelty. He genuinely believes that this pristine, silent void is a mercy. He's basically arguing that we should just let the fragile architecture of human convenience vanish completely into the ice. But the uncanny jester totally rejects this icy creed. He counters with a terrifying offer of his own. Instead of escaping into the void, we actually need to descend into the ember of discomfort. To explain this, he leans on what's called the Foucaultian dialectic. Now, simply put, this is the idea that the sovereign self can only truly know its own light by naming the not-self that stands against it. The jester recognizes that he is that necessary negation. He's the darkness required for the kingdom to actually see itself, ready to transition from a man who just uses mockery into a creature of absolute honesty. Now, what's really fascinating here is the core rivalry. On one side, we have the Sapphire Prophet's pristine, silent void. It's a cold ascent toward absolute nothingness, a place where the mask and the true face literally never have to meet. On the other side, we have the jester's violent, warm ember of truth. The jester embraces existential becoming, which, again, isn't a static state. It's the fluid, often really painful act of stepping out of a rehearsed life to encounter reality head-on, no matter how much it burns. Hearing all this, the seeker looks up at the cathedral's high spires and asks, wait, must we not climb toward the sun to find our true names? But the jester just shakes his bells. He says his path is an inverted journey. Unlike a traditional hero climbing toward some false summit to bring back a magical boon, the fool goes down to be stripped of absolutely everything. You see, you cannot expose the void in another soul without first standing at the precipice of your own. We have to walk downward through layers of grief and greed until absolute honesty replaces all our social conveniences. At this point, you might be wondering, like the seeker did, is this internal drive just some malicious, diabolic urge to destroy order? The jester quickly corrects him. You mistake the diabolic for the demonic, he says. Drawing from German cultural history, the demonic is this irresistible, super-rational energy of nature. It operates totally outside the framework of human morality or providence. It's this exact, potent, spiritual energy that forces the jester to stop pressing his laughter down and start exposing the world's hidden seams. And by surrendering to this demonic force, the jester becomes the not-self made flesh. Think of him as a dark refraction. When he stands before the kingdom, he acts as a prism in reverse, splitting society's apparent polite unity into its own hidden spectrum of truth. He doesn't actually bring the light himself. Instead, he forces the kingdom's performative sincerity to meet a face that absolutely refuses to play along with its polite pretense. Let's break down exactly how this works through his performances. When the seeker asks how his masks facilitate this transformation, the jester explains that each mask is a mirror that turns back upon the viewer. First, the monster mocks the rigid ceremony of grief. Then, the gilded fool mirrors the secret appetites of the lords until they literally cannot look away from their own excess. Finally, the madman disrupts the temple of commerce. Through these dances, the familiar is made strange, and it strips away the muscle memory of faith so our true asking can finally be heard. But as the descent deepens, we hit a stark threshold in our fable. We are forced to grapple with the Sapphire Prophet's incredibly seductive logic. Standing at the edge of the heavens, the prophet looks down and asks a haunting question. Why seek a total descent into the wound when the summit of nothingness is so pristine? And honestly, it's a powerful point. Why bother facing the painful friction of reality when you could just surrender to the peaceful quiet of the void? Well, the jester answers with his heavy, warm ember voice, completely piercing that freezing silence. He tells the prophet that he is not the origin of the truth. He's merely an instrument, the exact angle at which truth falls into the soul's most defended, unsaid rooms. The jester chooses to stand right inside the bleeding wound, using the geometry of the grotesque to project fierce, burning light into places that comfortable, direct illumination just ignores. This philosophical clash comes to a head deep in the Uncanny Valley when they encounter the Pale Inquisitor. Identified in this mythos as the Nietzschean shadow or the ugliest man, this grotesque figure embodies a massive psychological burden. He is the weary, heavy truth. He represents all the accumulated rot and unspoken secrets that the kingdom's ceremonies have swept under the rug for centuries. He is the ultimate test for our two philosophers. And you've got to see how drastically differently they handle him. The prophet looks at the shadow and just sees static in the signal of the end. He literally seals his heart with sapphire lines, freezing over his empathy to completely deny the rod. But the jester? He acknowledges the Inquisitor as a brother in the wound. Instead of turning away, he uses his dark refraction to illuminate this rot from within, demanding a real, painful human reckoning. This difference is perfectly captured in the tokens they hold. The sapphire prophet reaches into the dark and holds up a phantom coin to mock the jester, a symbol of total weightlessness and detachment. But the jester fiercely grips his violet coin. This is a secret token of shared reckoning. To the prophet, accountability is just a burden stopping the soul from floating into the abyss. But to the jester, that heavy weight is exactly what ties humanity together in a necessary debt of honesty. This fundamental disagreement even extends to physical existence itself. The prophet wants the world to just sleep in the ice. He calls the human body a hole where light goes to die. But the jester fiercely pushes back. He argues that the body, with all its cold and hunger and frailty, is the exact meeting place where the human and the holy actually intersect. He absolutely refuses to let the architecture of convenience erase the reality of our lived experiences. And the best part is, the jester isn't walking this dark road alone. He achieves what his explainer calls an uncanny synthesis. Beside him is the verdant dragon, bringing the primal honesty and demonic friction of the earth. And as the traveler completes his dances, the 300-year-old stone gargoyle on his scepter actually softens. Having witnessed the weight of truth, it transforms into a fiery seraphim. Together, they bring a fire of recreation meant to melt away all those false ceremonies. Above all, this burns the great star at the zenith of the great noon. The star speaks to the jester, explaining that its unconditional presence is actually way harder to face than simple judgment. Why? Because its light falls on every surface, the open and closed curtains of the soul alike, with precise indifference. It is a cosmic truth older than human morality. An instrument who finishes the road simply becomes the ground for future seekers to stand upon. Which brings us to the final divergence. As the prophet ascends to a false peak of vanity to escape into the void, the jester walks down into the valley of shadows. The silence of heaven breaks. He steps into a world where the proportions are just slightly off, and the windows reflect the back of your own head. The familiar is made terrifyingly strange, forcing the true thing to finally be confronted. Yet pausing in those shadows, the jester admits a profound existential terror. Standing between the performance and the dark, he realizes he doesn't fear the world's emptiness. He fears finding his own emptiness at the bottom of the road. He knows the mirror eventually turns on the one holding it. But driven by that demonic force, he faces the fear. His answer to his own dread is incredibly, vulnerably honest. I do not know, and I am going anyway. Ultimately, this explainer shows us that truth isn't just some verdict, delivered and forgotten. It transforms into a vigil. It is a presence that remains in the room, holding space, long after the performance concludes. The destination of this uncanny journey can't be mapped out in some theology of comfort. It can only be arrived at through the absolute honesty of the walking itself, leaving the true thing as a living revelation. So, we end our descent today on a final provocation from the great star. The light is a gift, but the choice is entirely yours. Do you hide behind the architecture of convenience, choosing the pristine, ignorant curtain of the soul like the sapphire prophet? Or do you have the courage to face the raw radiance of your own reality, daring to attend to the ember of discomfort within your own unsaid rooms? Think about it. Thanks for taking this incredible, uncanny journey with me today.